Hey, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com, and we are here doing our weekly series talking to people who are dads usually, but people who have expertise that relates to families and fatherhood. And I've got a different kind of guest today. I guess I always say that because I've got so many different types of people that I talk to. But we're talking to somebody who's got what's considered in phenomenal memory, autobiographical memory at the highest level, which is very few people have. So welcome, Frank Healy.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here.
So I want to hear, first of all, about your ability, your very rare ability to remember everything in your life, and then also how that relates to what people often call photographic memory.
The technical term is hyperthymesia, and the popular name is superior autobiographical memory. Because since I'm a writer, for whatever reason, it's often called highly superior autobiographical memory, but I like my grammar. So I'll just say superior autobiographical memory. And basically, what I can do is I'm 64 years old. And since I was not quite 6 years old, I started remembering every day of my life, the day of the week, the
Mm,
weather, personal experiences, as well as if there were any big news events that day. And
mm.
when people first hear about that, you usually think, oh, that's really cool. That's neat. And it is in a lot of ways, but there was a downside to it that I had to overcome. I would remember all the events of every day with the same emotional intensity as if they were happening right now.
So, so,
So
do- so does that mean you remember every moment of that day, or just the highlights of the day?
the highlights of the day, like at least one thing from each day,
You
like
don't you don't remember like getting up and dressing and like all those thousands, I mean, billions of memories like that. I mean, that would be infinite, right?
not a lot of the repetitive things.
Uh-huh.
However, even on days when not much new happened, I always remember something that happened that day.
Wow. And you could tie it exactly to a date and a day of the week and the atmospheric conditions and I suppose the emotional intensity around that day as well.
Yes, that's right.
That's amazing. So, and you say that there are only 20 people like you in the world? I mean, that is just a phenomenally small segment.
When I had been studied there, I was only the 12th person that they
Oh, wow.
studied at the University of California back on Wednesday, February 9th, 2011. And they've found a little over 100 in the US and also some in Australia and in parts of Europe. And they've discovered we can do it, not to brag, but they've discovered we can do it to certain degrees. And I am one of the best ones, even among the people who can do it.
Right, right. So
Uh,
even a memory like I'm not just 2 years older than you are, but like the assassination of John F. Kennedy, do you remember that day, or were you too young?
was a little bit out of my age range.
Yeah.
Out of my range. I was three and a half then, but from Monday, February 28th, 1966, I can
Wow.
remember every day.
Wow, that's astounding. Okay, so the thing that interests us a lot in this discussion about resilience is the fact that quite often we talk about resilience. One of the main benefits of one of the several benefits of resilience is the ability to process and get over things that happened to you in the past that you may be holding on to. So you say that you can feel that emotional charge still, and that's the thing that we talk about in coaching and trying to get over that thing. And so you've had experience of actually trying to tamp down, like because if you remember something that bad that happened to you, a remark from a friend or something, something that's relatively minor, but you hold on to it, that must be horrible.
It was horrible. So that's what got me interested in psychology. I figured, on the one hand, I'll never let go of the memories, but I would like to learn how to let go of the emotional charge behind the bad ones and just retain the emotional charge of the good ones.
Mhm.
And so I learned a lot of things through cognitive therapy as well as releasing. And I learned and some neurolinguistic programming, which I created some variations of in my books. It's like you hold on, like, so that now with a lot of the memories that weren't so pleasant, if they pop up into my head, it'll just, without getting back to the emotional charge, it'd just be like, okay, so what? It
Yeah,
happened without
right.
any strong emotion behind it. And that's what I help people do, that I counsel and coach. And I've written over 20 books, and one of them is three of them are a self-help trilogy called Heal Your Memories.
Mm,
And in all three of those books, I interviewed 12 to 15 people who had overcome some horrible tragedy in their life, but were now happy and thriving. And so, like, I interviewed people who'd been victims of school bullying, workplace bullying, rape on the streets of Chicago. I interviewed a man who was going to be a policeman, but a motorcycle accident where he broke his leg ruined that dream. So how he recovered. And I interviewed a man who was going to be the world record juggler, but he was hit by a truck one night and how he recovered. It
yeah,
doesn't sound like very happy reading, but the good
right.
part of it is, how they all overcame this and became happy and thriving.
Yeah.
So that's
Is there something that we can learn from the fact that I think you talk about the fact that there is innate resilience, and we often read about people who have these incredibly bad things happen to them, and they seem to rise up above it almost as if, like you say, it's innate. And then others of us, like some of the clients and people that you've interviewed, have to learn those skills. What is your feeling about how many people, what like are people like how many people are born with the innate quality to be able to overcome, and those of us who have to learn it along the way?
there's a lot of factors at play with that. Like, which, I mean, some people are just, I think, better at studying their environment and seeing what works and what doesn't work for them. And, others maybe through no fault of their own and they're not bad or weak people
You're
or
right.
anything.
No, I would never put a value judgment on how each individual handles that. It's a
Yeah,
singular thing.
because I know, because so they're the ones that need to be taught, but it's well worth it when they learn it.
Right, right.
How to
So- yeah,
overcome things. Like somebody who was bullied a lot needs to learn their self-worth and needs to trust people and have confidence in the adult world or in another work environment. And people who've had head injuries, they need to benefit from all the studies that have been done on the brain and learn to overcompensate as best they can and still function in the world. And so it's a lot. So, and people, will, I mean, if they, but I think whether anyone succeeds at overcoming adversity or not, the biggest factor is that the will and the desire is stronger than the will and the desire to be a victim.
yeah. That is such a fascinating part, and that's what I'm learning a lot more as I study resilience. Is this victim mentality, which to some extent I hate to go there, but in our culture right now, there's a lot of celebration of the victim mentality. And while I agree that there have been horrible social injustices done all over the place, that victim mentality is really holding a lot of people back. Is that
Yes, it really is. I think even with some commercial advertising and things they choose to put on the news. And I think I mean, the worst part of it is that it's teaching people not to take responsibility for their own thoughts, feelings, and actions. And so that gives them, when someone says they are a victim, that
right?
doesn't give any room to improve. But suppose they just say they've learned some victim behaviors, but they
Yeah,
can unlearn them and learn better things.
yeah,
That
yeah.
that gives the power back.
Yeah. And I say this a lot in terms of coaching and the saboteurs that you can have. And one of them is the victim saboteur. And some of us know that really well. Like nobody called me to invite me to the party. So they don't like me and I feel bad and woe is me. And that is very kind of fun to wallow in for a while. I mean, it obviously must give you some kind of positive feedback in some way, but it doesn't give you any room to go forward or to overcome or to learn something new or develop, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It doesn't give you anything new. Your brain won't be open to learning new. I mean, suppose they ask themselves the question, what can I do about this to still feel happy and maybe, I mean, they might plan to go with a friend who's also not at the party and hang out with them that night. Or sometimes it could be a little passive aggressive, but they could decide maybe in the next couple of weeks or next months, I'll have a party and invite everyone except the host.
Yeah, there you go. There's some positive thinking. Now, I
Yeah.
know you've written several books, 3 or 4 books on emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in that too, because so many of these concepts in positive psychology are interrelated. You can't separate them out as, one or the other and cut them up into little slices. But in your study of emotional intelligence, are there things that are new and that relate to this resilience question?
Yes, I think it does take emotional intelligence, like a certain emotional maturity to be able to like I think to put I mean, I wrote books on emotional intelligence in the workplace and relationships and a couple of other things. And it does take enough, I would say, intelligence, to put it basically, is having control over your emotions. And therefore, that leads to automatically to control over your behaviors.
Right. Right. Yeah. So we often talk about the fact that first step in this knowledge is understanding that you actually have been triggered in some way, and then trying to objectively assess that trigger, and then move on to what is the appropriate response.
Yeah, so that's it. Learning, being able to hold on, sometimes taking a couple of deep breaths and having a quick proactive thought, like if I throw a tantrum here, what'll life be like in the next 20 minutes, half hour, in the aftermath of that? Like if it's at work at the boss, I could be out on the street fired,
Right.
but or with I could hurt your relationship that you're in, and but then suppose you think, what if I just take a deep breath, look at this situation, what they said or did, from a couple different angles, not just that they're out to get me or that they're making a victim out of me. What if I did that instead? Then what it'll be like? Okay, we might have a little bit of a heated argument, but then the air will be cleared and things will be settled and it will feel relieved and good.
Mhm. So we talked a little bit about the fact that people might have some maybe innately greater ability to be resilient from birth, and some people learn that along the way. I would imagine that you would agree that it's the same thing with emotional intelligence. Some people seem to be a little bit better at that, but almost anybody, including those who are a little bit on the spectrum, can learn about emotional intelligence and at least cognitively understand it, and little by little add those habits, right?
Oh yes, they can. Yeah, they certainly can learn about it, and take like people who were raised in a very supportive environment where there was support but also appropriate discipline. They usually grow like in a authoritative environment, which is there's both nurturing and support and discipline, and they're the ones that naturally flow the best with emotional intelligence.
Mm.
Now, I think people who were raised in either a permissive where there were no rules or an authoritarian environment that was like military, but not much nurturing or anything,
Hmm.
they're the ones that have the most problems with. And they can still learn it, and even you were saying, even people on the spectrum, like autism or different degrees of mental challenges, they can still learn. When I was first out of college, I worked with a lot of Down syndrome clients, and if there's one word that was in all of their vocabulary, it was appropriate. It's
Uh-huh.
like, but sometimes they
Uh,
skip the A and just say, "Oh, you're not acting appropriate,"
right.
so they can be taught how to, use emotional intelligence for appropriate behaviors.
If they were taught that lesson, that sounds like they could easily have a better, more emotional intelligence than a lot of people I run into during the day. Do you have any? I don't know if this is kind of putting you on the spot, but I don't know if you have any experience with introversion versus extroversion. I mean, introverts quite often. I consider myself an introvert. We're quite often sensing what's going on, the feelings around us, and we're sometimes maybe too much in our heads and too much analyzing rather than what extroverts are. I envy their ability to jump in and say something really fast and have a reaction. And sometimes that's a good thing. But is there something in that extroversion introversion equation that's more or less dangerous in terms of resilience or emotional intelligence, rather?
I think that, introverts can still, I mean, I know introverts who can still be very assertive when the occasion
Yeah,
calls
yeah.
for it appropriately, and extroverts do that naturally. Now, I know recently there's been a third category that was created that I
Mm.
think I am, ambivert. It's like, I like to be sociable and talk to people, but when I've had enough of that, then I need my downtime. So,
That
I
sounds
can
like
appreciate. Yeah.
That sounds like classic introversion to me. I mean, I guess I feel the same way. I like interacting, but then there's a time for taking a break and getting away, getting my alone time.
Yeah, I mean, I can still stay at a party till the end, but then I probably won't want to go out the next night.
Exactly.
So,
When my wife plans 2 social events during the day, I always nix one of them. All right, so people can find your books. You've written 20 books. That's just an amazing amount. But you can find your books at just if you type in Frank Healy on Amazon.com, and then you
that's
also
right.
have a website phenomenalmemory.com where some of those books are listed. I don't think all of your books are listed on the website though, right?
Now we're working on changing it around to a website, healing.com,
Okay.
and and, and they Healy and that's going to have all the books on it. There's only 3 of them on it now, so Phenomenal Memory still has
Right.
more of them, but they're all going to be on there eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you take coaching clients. Are the coaching clients that you take mostly involved with the memory aspect and trying to tamp down the emotional charge of past memories?
Yeah, part of it, I mean, there's many things you do in therapy, but that is one of them. I mean, I've done this exercise with individual and groups, SN groups that's described in Heal Your Memories, Change Your Life, where you get in, first of all, you pick a good and a bad memory from the past. Then you get into a meditative state. And then there's detailed instructions in the book, but you alternate between visualizing every detail that you can from the good memory, and then for a shorter period of time switch to the bad memory, and then go back and forth a couple times, and by the end of it people have said that it's as if the feelings from the good memory outweighed or locked out the feelings from the bad memory, and the bad
Hmm.
memory was just like, so what, it happened, I don't care. But so that's probably a good way for people who think they've had a lot of bad memories to get over victimhood. They can get rid of the feelings from it so that it doesn't impact them in their present life. Like maybe they're wary of certain people, or if they were abused, maybe they don't trust people or they become shy, and that can make it hard to be in relationships. And there's and like if they had parents who were really tough on them, always called them incompetent, even though they worked hard, they might grow up to have low self-esteem, but might even actually be good at what they do, but still have low self-esteem.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many facets of each human being and what is considered like built into our personalities versus what we've learned out of behavior, out of experience, but then also how we can overcome that using all these different tricks in positive psychology, which is such a new and fascinating field. So
Yeah, that's it. There's always developments in the field.
yeah, yeah. So I've got to ask the question, like 5 years from now, you'll remember this day, August 14th, 2024, and
That's right.
will you remember the conversation we had, or will you remember every word of the conversation? What part of the memory will you have?
I remember that I was on the show. I'll remember you and Paul, and I'll remember that you're 2 years older than I am,
Wow.
and I'll remember the gist of it, not verbatim. Like I'll give you an example. When I was being tested at the university, they asked me, when was the last live Beatles concert in America? And I said, Monday, August 29th, 1966, Candlestick Park in San Fran.
Yeah.
And then somebody asked me, did you know that then? Or do you and no, I didn't know it then, but I can tell you what date I learned it on. Friday, October 6th, 1978. I was a freshman at LaSalle University, and I went into the student store and bought a book on the Beatles, and that's when I learned about it.
Wow.
So they were like I remember the dates I learned things as well as conversations, and
And I have some friends who like know, the entire rock and roll catalog, who played the guitar, who played the bass. Do you have that kind of memory as well, or is it a different type of thing, autobiographical memory versus factual memory?
if I can, if autobiographical is different, because I mean, when people first learn about what I can do, they think maybe I should have been an accountant or an economist or engineer,
Or a
something to
card
do.
sheet?
Yeah. something to do with numbers, but
Right.
it has less to do with numbers and more to do with autobiographical memory.
Right. Yeah. Okay, it's been fascinating talking to you, Frank, and I'm really interested in the work that you do because it does have these intersections between memory, which I know is a key component of resilience. You know, the ability to get over something that happened before, or something that happened just this morning. I mean, that's at least half of what we think about of resilience and the ability to overcome the challenges that happen to us every day. So thanks again.
Yeah.
Phenomenalmemory.com is where you can find some of Frank's work, and then the other other website,
Healy's Healing.
Healy'sHealing.com, and then look up Frank Healy on Amazon.com for the other books. Okay. Thank you, Frank.
Okay. Yes, it's a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Okay. Again, Paul Banis at GreatDad.com. You can find my coaching services at GreatDad.com/go. Until next time, stay strong.